Alright, so after a month of unseasonable warmth, Winnipeg has been freezing the last week, and I've just been craving noodles and soup. So today I'm going to share with you a really easy and very healthy pork and shrimp hot pot with fresh udon noodles. If you like this video, give it a like and consider subscribing. And with all that being said, let's make some hot pot. So because hot pot is a type of soup, the first thing we need to talk about is broth. Now you can use anything for this, chicken and veg stock work really well, but I'm going to be using dashi, specifically a mushroom dashi. Dashi is just a light broth consisting of dried sea kelp called kombu, and either a dried fish or in this case, dried shiitake mushrooms. I've had both soaking in cold water overnight. In a small pot set to high heat, add the dashi and bring just to a boil. Then remove the kombu and continue to simmer for 5 minutes. Allow the dashi to steep like tea for at least 20 minutes up to a few hours. Hot pots are great for using up vegetables in your fridge. I'm basically just using a little bit of everything that I have in mind, but just use whatever you have. There are no wrong answers here. Cabbage or leafy greens are pretty standard for hot pots. I'm using baby bok choy. Make sure you give it a quick wash in cold water first, because leafy green vegetables can be a major source of bacteria. I'm just slicing off the bottom and pulling the leaves apart, but I'm gonna leave the hearts intact because come on, that's pretty cute. Mushrooms are another hot pot standard. These are oyster mushrooms, and the only thing you have to do with them is cut off their stems. I've also got some plain old button mushrooms. Fun fact, Winnipeg has one of the largest mushroom farms in Canada, so that's cool. I'm just wiping off any dirt on the caps, slicing the end off the stem, and cutting them in half. Nothing fancy. Any good soup needs some carrot. I'm just peeling and slicing it into discs. You can cut your vegetables any way you'd like, just be mindful that hot pots are cooked fairly quick, so anything that takes a long time to cook should be cut small or thin. I'm also going to add a Japanese yam, which surprisingly I've never had before, and this was my reaction.
All this yam?
So if you can find one, I'd highly recommend adding it. I'm just peeling and cutting it into chunks. The next thing I'm going to add is some Daikon radish. If you've never had cooked Daikon radish before, it's very similar to potato, just without being starchy. I'm only using about a third of this one, and I'm just going to cut it into batons, basically shoestring fries. Last but not least is some green onion that I'm just going to cut into large pieces. Now that the veg is prepped, let's talk meat. I'm doing pork and shrimp, obviously, but again, use whatever your heart desires for this. You do you. You could even sub these for tofu and the dish would be vegan. The shrimp, I'm just going to remove the tails since these are already deshelled. You don't need to peel the shrimp, but I fully intend to inhale this, so yeah. The one thing I would suggest is try using a protein without a lot of fat on it, since it takes longer to break down. Plus the lack of fat will help keep the broth nice and clear. I'm just going to remove the fat cap on these pork loin chops. I've also had these in the freezer for a bit to firm them up, since I'm going to be slicing these pretty thinly and it just makes it easier. So the final thing to talk about is the noodles. I'm using udon that I made a little while ago and had in my freezer. You can use any noodle for this, but if you want to try a crack at making your own, you can check out my udon video. I'll leave a link in the description. Bring a pot of water to a boil, add the udon, and cook until they're nice and chewy, around 8 minutes. Then shock them in cold water. This is going to help them maintain that really nice chewy texture. Now that everything is prepped and ready to go, we can start cooking. I'd recommend using a wide shallow pot for this, but if you don't have one, don't panic. Any large pot will do. Then it's just a matter of cramming everything in there. If you're serving this for someone you actually like, take the time and make this look pretty. It'll be worth it. Otherwise, cram away. Add the dashi stock and bring to a boil. I'm also going to add some soy sauce for some saltiness and umami. Then reduce the heat to medium and simmer until the vegetables are nice and tender and the meat is cooked through. This will take around 10 minutes or so. Periodically, make sure everything is cooking in the broth by pushing it down and breaking up the meat a bit. Generously season with kosher salt, since there's no seasoning in this other than the soy sauce. And that's it. Pork and shrimp hot pot. Grab a big bowl and place a large handful of the noodles in the center. Then add a little bit of everything and pour a few ladles of the broth on top. Then proceed to inhale at your discretion. I won't be releasing an episode next week during the holidays, but I'll be giving an update on my channel. I've got some things in the works for the new year. But I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for all of the support you've given my channel these last few months. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a safe and happy holidays.